Okay,
Got it.
let's start. Hi, Raki. So,
Hi, Sinan. Great to meet
hi,
you.
nice to meet you too. Thanks so much for accepting my invite for an interview today. So this is a series of interviews that I want to do to celebrate International Women's Day this year. So let's start with you. So please tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so here's Ricky here. So just because we're talking about our professional lives, I think mostly today, I'm currently working as a machine learning and AI architect at a biotech company in the United States. So we're working on this project, basically building a system utilizing machine learning and deep learning approach to make predictions for recommending certain prescriptions, antibiotics to be specific for patients and with the right amount of dose to do this type of treatment. So that's what we're building right now. And in the past, I've also worked on medical imaging, image analysis quite a bit for more than 10 years, I would say. So it has evolved a little bit. So currently I'm in this like architect position as a technical lead. Yeah.
Wow, it must be a really long and fascinating journey that you have had. I'm interested in how you got started in this field of medical imaging.
Right. It has evolved for sure, but it hasn't changed drastically either. I've been following this path ever since I was in high school. I feel like I'm going to be an engineer. That's just in my mind all the time. The reason is
Wow,
kind of
where
funny
did that
is
come from?
yeah, I've never been the best student in my class. You know, the best and the best students, I feel like they're gonna go into science, like pure science, mathematics and physics, those type of hard science. But for me, I'm like good enough in learning new things and applying new things, but maybe not at very theoretical levels. So I'm more like, you know, an engineer type. So that just got me into engineering. And also like even engineering, my grades were not the best of the best. So at the time, if you go into engineering, you would go into like computer science, you would go to electrical engineering, electronics. Those are the type of things that the top tier student would go to. And for me, it's like, you know, I wanted to find my niche. So like a sweet spot that, you know, I will be good enough to stay in to find my spot. And at the same time, may not be like super challenging or anything like that. So that's why, you know, I just started my professional career, or even like before that, just choosing a college major is going towards this interdisciplinary you know, a major is biomedical engineering, is combining the knowledge in medicine and applied with engineering approaches to solve a specific set of problems. And as it evolves, it seems like it's playing out very nicely for me. I do see a lot of opportunities in this field, and especially in the past 10 to 20 years, with the new developments and tools in the engineering field, you can apply a lot of these things in the medical field and biotech. So there's definitely lots of opportunities in here, and I appreciate it.
Wow, you are definitely being very modest with your grades and your past achievements.
No, I've been surrounded by these, yeah, really top-notch students, and they're very talented, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's really early for you to have realized that you need to find a niche in the for your career to have a promising career perspective, because to me, at least when I was still in college, most people around me are not thinking that strategically, and it's mostly about trying to be good at one subject or your major, but not thinking like to find something that's multidisciplinary, and to find really a niche where you can position yourself. So for example, you find this niche to combine medicine with computer science. And in this field, you have been working for more than 10 years now, and there's still lots of opportunities coming up. So yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's really important for young people to also think in this direction instead of just competing with a single skill set. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I was actually reading one of your blog posts the other day. I think you touched on this point as well. It's like in this career field, you are going to discover a lot of this type of positions. Like even now for me, I consider myself in this interdisciplinary field, but still like a lot of those positions, when I browse through job postings, it's like, wow, those type of things exist. They're
Mm,
professionals, but they're not really sitting in any of those big list of majors that we consider when you enter a college application. They don't exist. You don't see those words in your major listing, but they are real jobs and they have real values. So I think for people to understand that they exist and there are opportunities over there. So don't limit yourself in such a box where you
mm,
want to fit one single word. There are lots of positions and you can stack your skills as well. You can have your knowledge in medicine, for instance, you have your knowledge in computer science, stack them, and then you'll be able to find something in particular in there.
So how did you accumulate your knowledge in medicine?
Yeah, it also evolved over time. So even though I went to school as a biomedical engineering student, back then this major was just one single class in our entire college. And we sat in the Department of Electrical Engineering, which is very interesting. And a lot of the courses we studied at the time were mostly just electrical engineering, system design instruments, those type of things. So medicine, we had some very basic courses like anatomy, pathology, those basic courses. So it would just, you have to use almost the other part of your mind to learn that piece of knowledge, because biology, we still have very limited understanding of how biology works. To my
Yeah.
view is that we've created a computer, we mastered the computer, we designed it, we know how it works, but we didn't design ourselves. Our human body is still a mystery to for human beings. So I gave birth to a kid, but I didn't create them at all. I don't know how they were created. It's such a mystery and it's so fascinating at the same time. So I think just to go in with such a modest mind is the discovery mindset instead of the learning mindset. I think I would learn a lot of the knowledge people have accumulated, but at the same time, during this process, I would also like to try to discover for myself what my observations are and how I can apply my knowledge and observations to the problems I'm solving right now. So that's, also over time, because I haven't really gone through like medicine or going to medical school. I haven't gone through any of those. A lot of it just as I'm working on specific projects. Like recently, I learned a lot about bacteria and antibiotics and how they interact with each other, how they work at a microscope level. So those are really fascinating to me. And we're still really, observing things a lot. Yeah.
It sounds to me that you have a curious mindset to new knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We have 100 years to live, but I don't think that's enough for us to understand everything and to
Yeah.
create everything. It's really yeah, it's fascinating, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially I think in the field of medicine, the last 2 years we had this pandemic and it's still not ending yet. And there must be so much more new knowledge in the field, and it's evolving very fast too.
Yeah, absolutely. From both sides, actually, the social piece to it, and also the medicine itself, understanding the virus and understanding what's behind it and how we can conquer it. This whole process is really, I think, it's a challenge for us as human beings for sure. But also during this process, everyone has learned a lot in
Mm,
their lives. It's definitely a challenge, and then however, after we come through, the whole thing. We discover new things and we figure out new ways to live our lives. So in the end, I think it's progress. So we always say, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. It's just you evolve and you learn during this process. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree more. So now I want to talk a bit more about your career development. You've had experience for over 10 years. I'm really curious about what kind of challenges that you have encountered along the way, and what would you say is the biggest challenge that has ever happened to you for your career?
Biggest
Yeah.
challenge during my career. How do I put it? I think it's like a whole life challenge. Since we're talking about women, and during this time, especially in the past 10 years, in my late 20s to 30s. So this time, combining everything, every aspect in your life, like we would consider having children, start a family, and at the same time, you want to carry on your career. So I see you have another question later on to talk about the work-life balance, etc. But I think the most challenging piece to me is you have to be able to accept what we're facing right now. You have to accept the priorities that you set for yourself. Do you want to put more of your time and energy into pushing your career forward, or do you want to split out a little piece of you or not just a little piece, a big chunk of you, to have kids and to nurture them, to create an environment and to spend lots of time with them, to manage their lives. So if you want to handle all of these things together, I think you have to accept that during a few years of your time, your careers might have to slow down a little bit. And for me, I was lucky enough to not quit working. I worked full time the entire time, but I have to admit, there are some very challenging times for me. Like I wasn't able to sleep at night. And the next day when I get up, I have to think about work, I have to think about this project, and operate as if I was, before I had kids, I was just myself. So that is a totally different experience. So you have to push things forward as if you just last through the day, handle everything, and that's success. So there was this period of time I felt career-wise, I just stayed steady, a little bit stuck, if you put that way. So I wasn't able to push forward. I wasn't able to have the capacity to explore new opportunities. I was not able to answer some calls or like from people who reached out to me, like, I have this new opportunity, would you like to connect and would you like to talk about it? I just say no. I just said no. I had to say no to just like to keep my life going. So I think that was the challenge I faced for maybe 5 years. It's a long period of time. But I wouldn't say it's such a bad thing though, because during that period of time, I feel very grounded in terms of working on my projects, because I told myself I don't have the capacity to expand right now. Why not just focus entirely on what's in your hands and try to solve the problem and try to lay the ground, try to build your product very nicely. Focus on every detail that you can do, just solve the problem at hand. So I think building my foundation during that period of time kind of gave me an edge later on. So it's quite interesting. Even though you felt like you had slowed down, but at the same time, you allowed yourself to take time to understand the whole system, to actually do the work, to build things not in like a rush mindsets. You're pretty grounded. You're very solid. So I think it has its benefits as well. So in short, I wouldn't say things are bad, but I wouldn't say things are super exciting either. So it's just life. I guess eventually we're just talking about life. At times it could be very challenging, but then when you look back, you can't see it happen any other way. It's just, you have to go through that route. If that
Wow.
makes
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I agree that sometimes your career is just blended into your life and you cannot just focus on this single aspect of life. For most of us, we have to at some point in life, we have to rebalance and rethink what is our priority and what's not. My next question about your work is that are you currently on a technical track or management track?
Currently, like I said in the beginning, I'm this technical lead, so I'm not a people manager. I don't have people report to me, but from technical perspective, I'm leading this project and this group of scientists and engineers. So we're building this system all together. So everyone has their different role in this project. Yeah, so I'm not really a people manager at this point. Yeah, whether or not I want to head towards that direction, is still in the air. I'll see how things play out.
Did you make this decision to stay on the technical track consciously, or did you just let it play out more naturally?
Yeah, it came to me naturally because I've always been pretty strong technical wise, and I like to be involved from the technical perspective as well. I wanted to spend more of my times solving the real problem instead of solving a lot of the relation with people. But that piece is very critical. We need someone in this team to work with individuals to have them realize their best potential, to work collaboratively. I absolutely acknowledge that role and the importance of that role. It's just for myself, I'm more intrigued and my curiosity lie more in the projects themselves. So at least at this point, I think that's what drove me to still stay on the technical track at this point.
Okay, I see. Would you be open to be a manager at some point in the future?
Yeah, I guess everything's possible, right? Yeah, things
Yes.
could evolve to a point where, I feel like I could contribute more in that position, and people would need me in that position. Or if I were to start something for myself, I've always had this idea of, potentially could start something, but it's just up to this point, it's still, being an employee at this point. So.
Okay, so you want to start your own project or company in the future?
That's a possibility, but I
Mm,
would like to think through that furthermore,
mm,
because some of the things individuals can do, but some of other things you really need resources. You need the type of structure of a large company. Things like the project I'm working on right now, there are a lot of biology aspect to it. So you need the setup to do those type of things. You need the instruments, you need the people, you need everything. It's just from an individual perspective, you cannot do type of thing with just yourself or maybe a few more people. That's just not possible. So maybe I should approach it from a different direction. Like it could be providing consulting
mm.
to this type of project. So you're still involved in a project like this. They provide all the resources, but you bring the knowledge to their plate and add value that way. That's something potentially possible.
So since we were talking about management and leadership, we are all aware that, especially in the STEM field, there's a much lower ratio of female leaders than
Mm.
male leaders. Do you think it's a situation that we need to address, or it's something that's not so bad?
It's bad. It's not balanced at all. So I would definitely appreciate more female leaders. Whenever I go to a place, I would, even just automatically assume the CEO that's going to talk to the company is going to be a white male. That's just a stereotype. But I've been to I've worked for a company who had a female CEO, and that was really, really nice experience for me. And I feel like, leadership wise, she's totally capable of doing things, and she's also closer to us. I don't know why that, maybe it's just the scale of the company is a little bit smaller, but she was willing to come to me and talk to me individually. So I think I really appreciate that aspect of her leadership. And also, just going back to the entire situation of why we have less female leaders. So I think it's from two perspectives. One is the willingness. So one is from our aspects. So like, if I ask myself, would I be able, or am I willing to step up and be a leader? I would hesitate sometimes. I would question, do I have the capacity? Do I have what it takes to be a leader? What if I embarrass myself? What if I say something wrong in front of 200 people? So that type of thing would hold me back. I would feel like I need to really pump myself up a lot to be in that position. However, just watching the male leaders in the past, they make mistakes, and they would just go up there, and sometimes they say things that are just stupid, and people would even laugh at them. But that's okay. They're still in that position, and they don't get fired. Maybe they get fired, a few years later, but then they go to a different company and they can still be the CEO. So that's something really interesting for me to see, is that, from your own perspective, how much are you willing, or do you have the courage to do that? It's outside of the abilities and outside of the knowledge you have. So that is just the willingness of things. Also, another aspect to this whole picture is, what are the opportunities out there? So if a board is looking for a CEO, would they be willing to hire a female to put her in this position? Or were they more willing to hire a male to put them in this position? And of course, maybe when you look at your choices, all you have are 5 males, then you don't have your choice.
Yeah.
And then what if, when you have someone in the picture, would you consider them? And what are the things you're going to consider? I think that's the opportunity side of things. So are there positions that can take female in without thinking that they're a lady, and just looking at their capabilities and looking at what they can do? So things have to come together. But I think overall, essentially, it's still like, as women ourselves, we're able to give birth. We have the ability to become a mom. So I think that's essentially going back to the root of things. What tells the difference between a man and a woman is the ability to bear and give birth to children. So that, evolves eventually to all of these differences in the workforce, is that with the expectation that women will spend more time with their kids and spend more time with their family to handle all of the chores and just push life forward. So that expectation is still there. It's still the reality. Is that a problem to solve? I think maybe the best thing to do is to provide more solutions, instead of asking people, you have to do that, but to give women choices. Like, if you wanted to spend more time with your kids, yeah, sure, you should do that if that's what you want, if that's where your heart is. But if you wanted to maybe send your kids to daycare, you want to spend more time at work, or maybe if you want the dad to stay home to take care of the kids, yeah, just feel free to do that too. So I think eventually we wanted options, and more ways to choose how we're going to live our lives.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because as society, we still have more or less a stereotypical view of the role man and woman should play in the society. I think it's really important for us to have different types of leaders that we can see around us, so we don't have to follow stereotypical male manager role model and see that, okay, I'm not him and I don't have the same traits as him, so I won't be able to be in his position in the future. But if we would have a more diverse set of leaders at the workplace, then people will, have different role models to look up to.
Yeah, I totally agree. So these public figures, these role models, they are very important for us to see. If you see someone else can do it, then it really opens doors to other people. Like, this is possible. There's a path that I could work up to that position and I could be in there because someone else has done it. So I think that is very important. Like, if we were to have a female president, then things are going to happen more, right?
Yeah, exactly. The next question I have is about growth, career growth. You are working with AI and machine learning technologies. This is a field that's evolving very fast. I'm curious about how do you stay up to date with everything that's happening in this field. I mean, 10 years ago, things were totally different. Even 5 years ago, especially with advance of deep learning, how we do things with machine learning algorithms is very different now.
Yeah, it has changed dramatically. So if I were to go back to look at my PhD thesis, I wouldn't say nothing would apply, but only a very small portion would apply, because people are solving the problems in a very different approach right now. Not like before, we wanted to come up with numerical methods through solving a PDE, those type of methods. Nobody's really using them right now. All we use right now is a deep learning network. We just train the model to have the model formulate its own mathematical function to solve the problem, instead of we explicitly spelled it out. So I appreciate that advancement. It is a really nice advancement, even though I had to learn a lot of new things. I have to pick up new libraries, new skills. I think that switch happened around 2017-ish. That's when TensorFlow came into play, and a lot of people started to explore using NVIDIA's GPUs to build these models, to train it and do predictions. And people have discovered to solve the exact same type of problems, especially in our field in imaging. If you just train a model compared to the algorithms we developed during the past 10 years, it outperforms. So why not go that route, right? If you have better speed and better accuracy, better prediction and all that, why not switch paradigms and just, do things the new way? So to keep things, up to date with all of these advancements, I guess going back to our PhD training is that you go out and read papers, right? You read what people had recently published in the past couple of years, in even like past few months. And what surprised me is actually people are so much more willing to share their work nowadays, which is really, really nice. They're willing to share their paper for free on arXiv. They're willing to share their code on GitHub. So a lot of times when you read a new methodology, a new network, or new data sets, you were able to just go out there and download everything and try things for yourself. And this is really, really nice, and I appreciate it a lot. Just compared to back then when I was doing my PhD again, is like you read a paper and you try maybe a few months try to replicate what they're doing, you weren't able to do it. A lot of the libraries are not open source, they're proprietary. So right now things are a lot easier. I think it's a great thing. And it opens doors for more people to come into this field, to contribute, and to also be willing to share their work. So I think we've built a very nice foundation for ourselves as a human being. Is sometimes I feel like this is really, something we were hoping for our entire society, is that, everyone wants to share and everyone shares for free. It's just that feeling of contribution is playing out really nicely in this field. So to keep myself again up to date, like even this week I was learning this new AI library that other people built because I came across it from a model that was utilizing for my project right now. So I just wanted myself to understand deeper of what they're actually doing. So I'm taking this course online by myself. So I'm just watching through these YouTube videos. They have like 10 lessons. Each one of them is an hour and a half. I'm just following through, and they posted their examples at Jupyter Notebook. So you could just follow through all of the steps and listen to what they're explaining, what they're saying. So that's type of education I think everyone should try to adopt these days, is instead of going back to a school, like you pay tuition and stuff like that, why not explore these type of free courses? A lot of them are very high quality, very well organized, and some of them are even just real college courses recorded, and they're available for you to look at as anyone on the internet, as long as you have access to internet. So take advantage of that. I think that that's something, our generation is starting to build for ourselves in the next generation. So these are really, really nice resources.
Yeah, I agree. The open source community and also all these online free educational resources have really helped everyone with internet access to educate themselves. But I'm still curious, along the way, have you ever experienced anxiety or fear when you realize that what you learned in the past has become the past and you have to pick up new things to stay relevant in the field?
Anxiety, I wouldn't say I'm anxious about this aspect of things, because I think everyone has a history, and you have your skills and you have your knowledge set, and you have your ways to approach a problem and solve a problem. None of them is a waste. None of them is lost. Nowadays in deep learning, we talk about transfer learning, right? You train a model on a generic data set, and now you put it with specific knowledge and labels. You can just bring that over. So I think as a human being, you have that transfer learning aspect in you as well. So everything you built in the past, they're still relevant, even though some of the tools, people have stopped using them. You have to pick up new tools. But all of it is to make your life easier. Just like, I programmed in C++ for this many years. And for the past couple of years, ever since I switched to Python, I stopped using C++. But I wouldn't say that the knowledge I built with C++ is a waste. It made things so much easier for me to transfer to Python. That's almost a natural transition, because you understand what's behind the whole things, right? You understand like variables, you understand how to manage memory, you understand, how you structure your code, how to define things, a class or a function. All of those things is not a waste, even though it's a different label, it's a different word, but it's on the back end, a lot of those are shared. So I'm not really anxious about this type of thing, but in the future, I'm kind of unsure of where to go from now. So that's maybe the anxiety piece is coming in. It's like, I've worked on my previous job up until 2020, and then I switched to a different job, and then I switched to a different job. So the past couple of years, maybe one piece to it is the pandemic and all of the economy is working. We had the great resignation. So everyone's trying opportunities, trying to switch positions. So I don't know from where I'm standing right now, where am I going to go? So that's something that makes me anxious sometimes. I need to spend more time to really focus internally and also look externally, whether or not I wanted to switch very soon again or stay put for some longer. So those are types of questions I'm asking myself right now.
I think you made a really great distinction between transferable skills and specific knowledge themselves. Sometimes the tools that we learn in the past might not be applicable anymore in the future, but the transferable skills that we accumulated along the way will still be very relevant in the future. Yeah. Now that we are talking about a career change, so I'm curious that about when it comes to a career change, what kind of opportunities are you looking for? And if you are, for example, if you are presented with multiple opportunities or job offers, what would you use to evaluate them?
That's an interesting question, but I haven't, I was not put in that situation in the past. It's quite funny because I was never offered multiple opportunities at the same time. It's really funny. Maybe because I'm not good enough, but or maybe because I'm lazy. It's just, I've held 3 positions at 3 different companies so far, and every time that was mostly the one single opportunity that I was most interested in, and I was presented with an offer and negotiated back and forth a little bit, and then I just went with it. So I didn't have to like choose between 2 different ones or among several different opportunities. I didn't have to do that. But
But do
what
you have
made,
to?
yeah, go ahead.
But you still have to choose between this future opportunity and your current job, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was just going to say that, yeah,
Yeah.
when you're making that switch, what makes things happen, right? So I think for my first switch, it was because I felt like at the company at the time, there's not a very clear path for me to move forward. I wasn't sure whether I'm going towards like the management track or going towards a higher level of the technical track. And the team had stayed stable for quite some time. And a lot of the work is like maintenance type of work. There's not a lot of new projects for us to work on. So at the time, a previous coworker approached me and they said, we have new funding at this new company. Would you like to give it a try? And that came pretty naturally for me because, I was kind of bored back then. And now there's something new that presented to me. Why not give it a try? And it's very relevant. And it's a project that I was very interested in. I wanted to solve. So that was my first switch. And then after that first switch, I worked on that project for a year. I feel like I basically solved it. So the next piece is to
Wow.
productize it and to go through the process. And some of the other aspects I was not entirely interested in. And then during that time, this other headhunter, they approached me. So on LinkedIn, basically. So they approached me and presented with this new opportunity. And quite interestingly, it's outside of what I've been doing in the past for many years. Like I said, I was imaging the majority of the time. And this new project is not entirely imaging. There's a very heavy biology piece to it and numerical data and large data. So one thing to it is I was able to make more money. I think that's just very realistic. You want to be able to advance not only in your career growth, but you also want to make more money as the
Hmm.
salary. So that was one piece
Definitely.
of it, but also I wanted to see what's out there. Instead of limiting myself only in imaging, I wanted to see what deep learning can solve outside of imaging. I think that's also the curiosity side of me, is that I've been just living in this shell for so long. I identify myself as a medical imaging scientist, but what if I was put just out there in the world? Can I still utilize my skills to solve other problems? Is it applicable, or am I not able to do things outside of medical imaging? And it turns out I was able to do it. So that's just going back to the transfer learning. I was able to transfer a lot of my knowledge into this new role, into this new project, and I'm capable of solving new problems, which gave me confidence in a way. Is like, I don't have to limit myself in a specific domain, even though I found myself, I think I've been thinking that was my niche and I've solved that position type of problem, but still, I'm able to go out there and solve more problems. And right now I'm not even thinking I don't have to limit myself in machine learning or deep learning. I could stand up even further to solve it from a system level. So even machine learning is still a tool. It doesn't have to be my entire field. So my field could be, defining the problems from a higher level, from the product level, from the users level, from the marketing's level, and then work backwards to see what options I have in terms of tools to solve a customer's problem. So I'm just, even pushing myself further towards the use case instead of the problem or the tools.
Wow, yeah. Well, I think it takes lots of courage for anyone to, to think outside the box and actually to challenge themselves and challenge their existing or old identities and to get out this comfort zone. Wow, that's really impressive.
It feels good. If it works out, then it feels pretty good.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't work out.
It's possible, but I always told myself is I left this position, but I had the opportunity to come back. If things just don't work out at all, I'm still capable of doing my old job, so I have nothing to lose. So yeah, that's something good to have. Yeah.
What do you think is the balance between, being the expert in a niche field and growing into some other fields and try that? Do you think timing would be an issue in this process? For example, for a younger professional, maybe it would be more interesting for them to stay a bit longer in a very specific field before trying out a bunch of different things. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't have a specific recommendation or anything for myself. What happened was I stayed focused for quite a long time. And like I was saying earlier, is part of it is because I was having kids and I didn't have the capacity to expand too much during that period of time. But if you have the capacity to do it earlier in your career, I mean, why not? You could learn a lot during this process, whether or not you chose to stay in a specific area or you wanted to be a manager, maybe to work at a system level. It's up to you to decide. It doesn't have to be one way or another. So I don't have a very strong opinion in there. I think either path have their benefits and maybe have their limitation a little bit, because something to maybe worry about a little bit in the earlier phase of your career to expand too much is that eventually there's nothing for you to grab onto. So you're not really solid in any of the areas that you touched upon. You're like, I know a little bit here, a little bit there, but what is your actual strength, right? You kind of want to build that core strength inside of you. But on the other hand, knowing all of these at the same time could be your core strength. Just stacking your knowledge everywhere, it could be your core strength. So just thinking of, from different perspectives, as long as you can apply your skill set and your knowledge base somewhere, as long as you can, realize your value somewhere, then you're good. So don't limit yourself.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you have to be creative and flexible. And to actually find place in the industry where you can have this fit, because some roles require more specialized knowledge and some roles would require more generalist knowledge.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question is going back to our topic today. So we know that there's not really a lot of women that's studying and working in the STEM field. Before the interview, I read a study that shows that the distribution of men and women across different occupations sometimes is not really a matter of unconstrained choice. means it's not like 10% of women study math and then 10% of women are working in the math field. But lots of times when you work in a non-traditional occupation, then you have a higher chance of not staying in that field because of various factors. So for example, there are lots of research that suggests that women who study and work in non-traditional occupations like STEM, they would get driven out of the field because of hostile work environments. What's your thoughts on this problem, and what do you think companies and business leaders could do to improve this situation?
That's interesting. So for myself, I've always worked in very welcoming environments. I didn't feel any hostility during this process. I was fortunate enough to have all these teams that are very supportive and welcoming, and allowed me to grow and allowed me to have my personal time. And everyone's super intelligent, and so I like to solve problems and like to work with everyone and in the team. So I think maybe it's just my own situation has played out pretty nicely. I don't feel like I was driven out of the field anywhere. I was pretty welcoming, and to this day I'm still like being approached by a lot of people like presenting opportunities to me. So I think at least around me in this field, women are very welcome to join projects, to join the team and be part of the solution. So I think that's something very positive. However, I don't deny that there could be places where you have a team of men and they just drove women away. It could very well happen. It could be because of some of the time constraints that women can put to work, and also the ability to maybe mingle with the teammates. Like I don't like to do that a whole lot. I chat with my teammates, but I don't like to spend a lot of time outside of work to just maybe go to a bar or go hang out with my teammates. I don't do that. We could go out for lunch, so just like a work lunch, or just communicate slightly. But I could imagine things happen like that. What can management do? Because I'm not in that position. I would appreciate they obviously do what I've been experiencing, is just give you a safe environment, a welcoming environment, and feel like you could be yourself no matter what your choices are. You don't have to feel you're obligated to do some of the things you don't want to do outside of your work. As long as you can perform your work duty very well, you should be welcome in this environment and just realize your full potential career-wise.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's good. So I also want to talk about my personal experience because I worked at different companies and different teams too. I sometimes feel, the ratio of men and women in a team can to some degree affect the communication style at work a bit. So for example, because I'm also working in tech, in some previous teams, there were like a half women, half men. And then in some teams, there were like, I'm the only woman in the whole team. So sometimes it does feel a bit different, but I would say like a pandemic and remote work has made this a bit better because, we are all having online meetings now. We don't need to face each other. And sometimes this physical differences can have some subtle psychological impact too. I would say that, like as a woman myself, I would really prefer to work in a team that I'm not the only woman in the whole room. So that sometimes give me a bit of this psychological pressure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I also perform better in a team when both genders are balanced. I don't mind work with a full team with all ladies. That's fine.
Yeah.
However, yeah, just reminded what you said, reminded of myself, like I was in meetings with a group of men, and that did feel a little bit different, you know, the psychological
Mm.
part of it. But that didn't happen a lot. Most of the times, because we had women on our team, we had multiple women in different roles. So mostly is when you're in a meeting, there's a combination of both
Mm.
gender.
The next topic I want to touch on is the pandemic. So it's already been over 2 years now, and well, we are still meeting online for this interview. So I'm curious to know how has this pandemic changed how you work?
Yeah, apparently it has changed. So before pandemic, I went to the office every day, and I feel like I had to do that. I tried to work from home some days, but I felt the pressure, like, you know, I'm getting disconnected with the team if I stay at home and work that day, even though we could still chat and email, but still, like, you know, you're not physically sitting around your team, then it feels disconnected. But now it's just my current position is completely online, is completely remote. So the whole team, they're everywhere. So I'm kind of in the middle of United States. We have members on the East Coast, we have members on the West Coast, and we're also working with a team in Japan. We're working with another team in Spain and Europe. So
Wow.
we're around the globe, really. We're solving this this project, this problem around the globe, really. So I think that's something pretty fascinating. It's nice to see, like, you know, talents around the world that can be gathered around the same project, and we can work towards the same goal. It's pretty neat. And I liked working from home. So there's a lot of benefits to it. Like, you know, I could squeeze in an interview with you, right? It is a work day, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the time that I could take to do maybe some other things. I could scatter around during the day, and I could also work late hours at night or during the weekend. I would just sit in front of my computer and see how's my training's working, doing, and, you know, is it converging, stuff like that. So
Mm.
I'm closer to work. I'm also closer to life. So I appreciate that aspect to it. Even though it's a forced change, nobody wanted to do this change at first. And I got pretty anxious at the beginning because no one knew how this thing is going to play out and how long it's going to take. But eventually, I think it kind of played out nicely. It's probably going to take another year or so for some of the companies maybe go back to their office if their team is still organized that way with a local team. But like I can't imagine, you know, how our team is going to come together, because it's just not possible. Everyone's
Yeah.
everywhere. They have offices, so our like headquarter is in Sacramento, California, the headquarters there. So I can imagine, you know, maybe I could take a trip there to at least visit the lab, visit, you know, what has to be physically there. But my nature of work doesn't require me to stay there the whole time. And I could totally do my work remotely. That's not an issue. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. I also see like how the pandemic has changed lots of things here in Berlin in Europe. After 2 years, it seems to me that lots of people, at least in tech, are not willing to go back to the office anymore. You know, for companies now to recruit talent, it's somehow it becomes really important for them to offer this at least hybrid work mode, if not 100% remote.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of this is going to stay for sure.
Yeah, I think remote work has definitely lots of its benefits. But do you think remote work has impacted men and women differently?
Hmm. Yeah, this is a good question. Initially, I felt like I was impacted because I was like housebound with my kids, with two of my kids, in the school was closed for at least 3 months, I think, initially in 2020, starting March. So I had to make adjustments for sure, you know, to keep everyone everyone sane instead of going crazy, staying in the whole house all day. So we try to still go to our backyard at least, to get some fresh air. And I also appreciate that later on during that summer and into the fall, our school opened back again. So they opened pretty early. They offered choices, even though some families still preferred e-learning. However, our school offered the daycare option, so you could do e-learning from school, but they offer teachers to stay there with your kids. So I think this is really a community solution. Eventually, people want to create, not say opportunity, but solutions to all the families living in this community. I like to keep everyone safe, and also at the same time to keep a structured day, instead of everyone stay home all day long all together. It's like no boundaries at all. And also for myself, towards the end of 2020, I purchased this new property. It's a small condo for me to use as a home office, because I realized I'm going to operate like this for a pretty long time, looking forward. Probably not going back to the office anytime soon. So I think it was a good decision for myself to really draw a boundary between work and life. So family and work. I do have to manage both ends, because this is a new property. There's some management aspect to it as well. But I think this new space I created for myself, it's something I would consider it's a luxury for me, and that's the most money I've spent on myself on the whole entire life. I would always consider the house I bought, that's like for our family, for a family member. But this little condo is just purely for myself, at least at this point. And I think I'm fortunate enough, just financially, I'm able to afford it, and it's just a nice space to have.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you had this physical space for yourself, and to have this boundary between family life and work life. I think we're approaching the end. Okay, so to end this interview, I have a question for you. If you could go back in time to, say, 15 years ago, what would you have done differently?
What would I have done differently 15 years ago? I'm trying to think. That would be before around the time I just got my PhD. So
Mhm.
I'm so
At
old,
the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not very early. So that's not like, after you just graduated from high school, that kind of early. So yeah, it's really hard to say. I don't think I made bad decisions at all. But I wouldn't say things are easy either. The
Mhm.
decisions I made, some of them led to pretty big challenges in my life. It's just still going back to having kids. I think that's the kind of the biggest impact in my life during the past 10 to 15 years. My daughter's 13. So yeah, it's really, during this entire time, just being a parent is tremendous responsibility. And it brings so much uncertainty to your life. You can't expect things to happen smoothly any day, basically. Like even I'm talking to you right now, I could very well just get a call from the school to say, something just happened to your child, and you come pick them up. So those kind of uncertainty, it really makes things a lot harder to plan. We always think pandemic has made things harder to plan, but just having kids plus the pandemic making things even harder to plan. A lot of the things you put on the calendar ahead of time, they got canceled, they got rearranged, and also juggling two kids. And just don't ask me why I had two kids. I felt like I should have two kids, and I want to
Mhm.
have two kids. I don't complain about it, and it's totally my plan, and that's how I not just executed the plan in my head, but also, just managing time is a pretty big task. I have to work around my work time and work around both of their schedules, especially my younger one is 7 now. He has his own activities as well. So both of their activities have to manage. What would I have done differently? I wouldn't do things differently, really. I still need to carry through this whole thing, even though I know there will be lots of challenges and difficulties through this process. I wouldn't. I never would want them to not exist. I really appreciate that they exist in my life, and I brought them to my life. And my career wise, I missed a lot of opportunities, I would say, during this past 10 to 15 years, especially in the earlier years. Just thinking about the opportunities I missed, especially those Bay Area opportunities. Just think about how the stocks grew for those companies. If I were to join them earlier, I would be financially free at this point, totally. I would be maybe at 5 million mark already. And now apparently I'm not. So those things I've missed. So in exchange of having a family, having 2 kids, what do I think about it? I think that's probably just the way life has to be. You make your choices and you stay with it and you play with it and you carry along, and who knows what's going to happen next. I think, but overall, I'm pretty positive. Even the position I'm at right now, I'm really thankful for what I have, for the ability that I have, and for the family around me, for this little condo, this space I created for myself. I think I'm in a very fortunate position, even though I missed a lot of opportunity. I'm still very fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you wouldn't exchange anything for a family.
I mean, it doesn't have to be the choice for anyone. Yeah, right. I'm not saying replicate my life. It doesn't have to be this way, and may not be the best choice, really. If I were to take up some of those opportunities earlier on, maybe I'm able to create even a better life for my kids. Who knows? You could maybe shuffle things around a little bit. Yeah, if we were to go back in time, I would buy Tesla, like I did with Bitcoin earlier in time, but you can't just, yeah, we can't
Yeah,
travel back in time.
yeah. Things just happen and this is life.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, Ricky, for joining me for this interview. And yeah, I learned a lot from our conversation, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's so much fun talking to you. Yeah, we should do this
Yeah.
more. And I look forward
Yes.
to seeing your blog posts and your interview with other people as well. Yeah, it's a very, very fun project.
Yeah, thank you. It's so much fun to have you. And you are my first guest, so this is like
Okay.
a pilot run.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I think, yeah, we ran a little bit longer in time, but I think I don't feel like it's that long. Yeah, our conversation has been really meaningful and back and forth. I enjoyed it a lot.